Peace. Islam. Sheekamauga Alamassee-El. Coming at y'all live. Deep, deep, deep down. Alamassee Arabian country. Coming at y'all live from Atlantis, Mississipian country. So-called Atlanta, so-called Georgia. And you know, we just out here, you know, Atlanta, so-called Atlanta, may be a big city, but you best believe it's still country. It's still, you know what I'm saying, Chattahoochee River country, you know what I'm saying, right off the plateau. So you got a big city, but you still got, you know, you got these woodlands. We still the woodland Mississippians, don't get it messed up, you know what I'm talking about. But tapping in live, just passing through the traveling mode, doing the knowledge. Reason why we chose to kind of pass through that as so-called Atlanta, or we call it Atlantis in the real language, you know what I mean? Earlier today, we were coming at y'all live from Morris Bluff and the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and we were talking about the whole civil rights demonstration and how that, you know, and we really wanted to delve into, because Atlanta was another kind of hub and base of the so-called civil rights movement. You know, there's a lot of headquarters, a lot of the organizing of that whole demonstration happened right here in Atlanta, you know, as we all know. So what we want to do, since we're starting to, we want to reorientate the real Mississippians who want the real knowledge, because it's been hidden and kept from a lot of y'all long enough. And of course, people don't like to read and don't like to read books and do their own research. A lot of people are too in their lower selves and worrying about entertainment and whatever type of distraction they got out here for y'all, for your lame in the brain types and game goofy types. You know, it is what it is. I mean, it's been decades and decades, and it seems like folks just don't want to do the knowledge to their own situation, their own nationality, or any of this stuff. They just want to walk around looking lost. And it's funny because deep down, a lot of people know they lost. They know something ain't right, but it's like, you know, it's like, well, at least I get to party and have a good time and BS around all day and go to work, get my little paycheck and be off on the weekends. I don't need to do anything extra. You know what I'm saying? That's what a lot of people's minds is at. But for those who really want to know what's really going down and why a lot of times we find ourselves in these quagmires and traps and everything, you know, we just gonna start doing the knowledge and keeping it real, especially for the youth, man. Because again, it's sad that so many of these elders just, they were unwilling to, so many of these sorry elders. And again, we're not talking about all of them. You know what I'm saying? There were some real ones, but a lot of folks just, they were too busy having a good old time playing games. You know what I'm saying? Getting all into the dope and all type of stuff and just partying and BSing around, discoing and whatever and freaknicking and whatever the hell they was doing. You know what I'm saying? Just having a good time. They were too busy to sacrifice parts of their lives for their children's sake. And again, you ride around Mississippian communities in these places now, and you see the dire straits of a lot of the youth. You know what I'm saying? That's the evidence of the failure of a lot of the elders, and it's a damn shame. And it's real sad. But anyway, so, but we really want to put it in perspective for the youth. You know what I'm saying? Because the moles, the people still care. And the rest, a lot of other folks don't care, but the moles really care. You know what I'm saying? That's why the moles is the future. Real talk. So we're gonna do the knowledge to the whole civil rights demonstration and what it was really about, and why all of a sudden, around the time of the 50s, in the 40s, after post World War II. Now these folks done hated our guts ever since the end of the Civil War. You know what I'm saying? They had the Jim Crow, they had all of the so-called racist violence and all this stuff. The martial law enacted on our people, running folks off their land and doing all type of degenerate, you know what I'm saying, all type of nonsense, trying to get the nobles off their land, right? You know what I mean? And again, it's not all on the op. It's not all on those types of ops. It's not all on the so-called Europeans or whatever. Because again, we don't deal too much with color on this side. Because the satanic forces that united to take down the nobles in America, trust me, that whole alliance goes across color lines. And that whole color demonstration it really was put together to throw you off. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, these folks went all the way up to the 50s and they ain't want nothing to do with you. You know what I'm saying? They was real hardcore about segregation. But all of a sudden, and I know a lot of people have asked themselves deep down in their DNA, why all of a sudden in the 50s, in the so-called 50s, did they want us integrated? You know what I'm saying? What was up with that? Because it was real weird. All of a sudden, there was just this big old push and people just came out of nowhere pushing integration and the civil rights and all that stuff. But we're going to break it down and do the knowledge to why that was and why did they come at that particular time. So check it out. So really doing the knowledge, understand. We still understand that, and it really goes back to the so-called Revolutionary War. But let's talk about why the so-called, it really starts, the story of of why with the whole civil rights demonstration, because the civil rights demonstration has a lot to do with the current situation, political situation our people find themselves in. So a lot of our people, they actually care. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of folks are so dumbed down and, you know what I'm saying, and into the nonsense that they don't even care. But for the ones who care, the reason we find ourselves in a political situation, a lot of us find ourselves in a political situation we're in, it really goes back to the civil rights movement, but the origins of why they brought in the whole civil rights demonstration. It goes all the way back really to the American Revolutionary War. It goes back further than that, but it really goes back to the American Revolutionary War. Now, what really went down with the so-called the American Revolutionary War was it was kind of a civil disagreement with our people. Now, what happened? The reason why the 13 colonies were even set up is because the so-called Muslims of America, we had a military alliance with our Israelite family members over there in Europe, the Israelite noble families over in Europe. These people descend from America. Don't get it messed up. You know what I'm saying? Like the King James, the so-called French Huguenots, all these people, the King Charles, all these, the Queen Elizabeth, all these people had American blood from the Israelite branch. You know what I'm saying, of our people. So around that in the 1400s and all the dumb divorces and everything, all these edicts that the Pope started putting out, what was happening over there, especially in Europe and in South America. Don't get it messed up. This was not just Europe. It was happening in South America as well. This Roman Catholic Reconquista type of demonstration where these new Roman Catholics, these new more pagan Roman Catholics were striving. What they wanted to do was they were trying to bring pretty much the whole world under one Pope, under one king. You know what I'm saying? So in order to do that, and again, this is really due to knowledge, this is the beginning of industrialization. Because in order for them, the whole play is they need everybody to bow down and take orders from one entity to have corporate industrialization. You can't have a whole bunch of nobility and a whole bunch of cultures that are dealing more with taking orders from the Most High, dealing with, like, you'll have nobles and they'll say they only take orders from God. They don't take orders from men. You know what I'm saying? And that's what a lot of our European nobility over there was. That's how they were. They were nobles. You know what I'm saying? They were ruling like that. They said, we only take orders from God. We don't take orders from no man or no pope or no nothing. You know what I'm saying? That's just how, again, that's in the blood. So around the time of the 1400s, they were coming out. The Pope was coming out with like the dumb divorces and all this stuff, 1492. So what happened was there was a rebellion against all of that over there in Europe. And really in South America, but in Europe, and that's where the whole Protestant demonstration comes from. Like the French Huguenots, the Protestant demonstration in so-called Great Britain and all of that. That's these people, the so-called Protestants were the kind of the regular people in Europe, and they were under the Yahudi nobles, the old Hebrew nobles of Europe, Israelite nobility of Europe, like over there in Great Britain and France and like Prussia, just, you know, what they so-called Germany and all of that. These people were kind of related to us. You know what I'm saying? So they came up with the whole Protestant rebellion because they were fighting back against that the Roman Catholic siege that was coming out. You know what I'm saying? Because the Roman Catholic demonstration was trying to bring everybody under the Pope. So the Protestants wasn't really with all that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so they were united against the Moors because, you know what I'm saying, the Muslim, the Moors, so-called Spain, which is in South America and over there and in America. You know what I'm saying? Because the Moors have always been headquartered in America. Don't get it messed up, in North America. So-called, what is it called, the United States right now. This is where the Moorish demonstration all over the world has always been headquartered right here. Don't get it messed up. This is Morocco. But since that was going down, and our people over in Europe were rebelling against the Roman Catholic, siege that was coming, you know, it was nothing. We created a military alliance with our people. So we had a military alliance with the French Huguenots, that demonstration, and we had an alliance with Great Britain. You know what I'm saying? So that's why you had New France, and you had the 13 colonies and all that stuff. Different noble families had alliances with Morocco. You know what I'm saying? And if you can go do the research and see that. Like Queen Elizabeth, they talk about she was aligned. She had deals, and she had an alliance with Morocco because she was a sister. You know what I'm saying? Like they repainted, they whitewashed everything. But Queen Elizabeth, best believe, she was down with Morocco. That was us. You know what I'm saying? It was the Muslim Israelite alliance against this pagan Roman Catholic budding power. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we were so that's where the origins of the 13 colonies was set up. It was the noble Muslims who were over in America, aligning themselves with the Israelite nobles of Europe. You know what I'm saying? South America and all of that. So when they were coming here, they were retreating from, you know, all the nonsense going on in Europe. Yeah, they came over here with us, but they also brought they brought a lot of their peasant working class that was under them, because they were nobles over there. We had been going back and forth to Europe. So the families that went to Europe a long time ago, no, they kept their blood intact for the most part. But of course, you know, the Israelites always tend to fall off, but they kept their blood, their noble blood for the most part, and they were ruling over there, and they kept it in the blood. So they came back over here with blood titles, and they brought their peasant working class over here. So that's what the 13 colonies was. So we were cool with James, Elizabeth, and all of them. We gave them some land on the East Coast to come over here and start doing their thing, just due to our military and economic alliance against Spain, against the Roman Catholics and the Pope. So they came over here with their working class. And you know, it was cool at first, but what always happens is the working class, the people who are working the plantations, and the people who are under the crown who came over here, of course, they get Americanized, just like everybody does when they come over here, because we gangster over here in America. You know what I'm saying? It's like people get a taste of this free culture. And again, let's stress this. America has remained free for so long because the culture of America with the original American blood is we don't bow down to no man. That's where all of that comes from. A lot of these other places all around the world, they'll sit up there and bow down to kings and bow down to popes and all type of nonsense. You know what I'm saying? In America, we don't do that. So we've always fought. So, because the American way is taking orders from God, taking orders from Allah. You know what I'm saying? That's why we do in America. You know what I'm saying? So that's why America has always been able to maintain some sense of freedom. You know what I'm saying? And that's why we always call thugs and all that stuff. Like people say the crazy Americans, because Americans just don't bow down. But it's funny, people talk all that trash, but they always running up here trying to be free. But so in the 13 colonies, around the time of I guess the mid to late 1700s, you had so many peasants, you know, of the peasant working class that was demanding like freedom. They were getting upset. They were getting more and more upset. And then, you know, of course, they were marrying into a lot of the Moorish families on the upper East Coast and all that stuff. These people had allowed them to marry into their families for so long. You know what I'm saying? Again, a lot of our people up on the Northeast, they were kind of the first to really lose themselves and lose who they are. They kind of blurred the lines between nobility and peasant, and they let a lot of these people marry into their families, bleaching themselves out. They started signing their rights, a lot of their rights in their land over the so-called Great Britain, like the Iroquois Confederacy, because really the Iroquois Six Nations is really what essentially became the United States. You know what I'm saying? But they had allowed so many people to marry in their families over time, and you know, they were kind of taking up the cause of, man, we treat these peasants, we treat them kind of wrong. They do deserve some type of freedom or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Let's let them, they should get some freedom. This is a lot of our people up on the East, up on the Northeast. So, you know, as time went on, you know, I mean, like you had instances like Bacon's Rebellion in Virginia, Bacon's Rebellion of 1666. Now, what that was, and they all always try to tie the Mississippians in the Bacon's Rebellion. They'll talk about that. Well, that was the first time that the so-called the black slaves got together with the so-called European Caucasoids, and they rebelled against the British nobility. But they'll try to tell us the story like we had something to do with that. No, let's talk about what was really going on with things like Bacon's Rebellion. You know what I'm saying? Bacon's Rebellion of 1666 in Virginia. It was really like some so-called Negro indentures and workers and plantation workers who were under the crown. They had nothing to do with us. We were noble Muslims. We were the so-called Indians. We were noble Muslims. We didn't have to answer to nobody. So these people, they got tired after a while. They were kind of subjugated and they had contracts they had to honor. They couldn't move around on those colonies. They couldn't leave the colonies or anything like that. So some of these so-called Negroes, they got together with the poor so-called whites. You know what I'm saying? And they rebelled, because really what it was a lot of these people got tired of seeing. Of course, they were under the British, so-called British nobles, but they got tired of seeing noble Muslims being able to walk onto the colonies, do their thing, not answer to nobody, wearing our noble garbs with our turbans and all that stuff. They got tired of that. You know what I'm saying? Just like these you got a lot of lames in your community now they say they hate niggas, and you know what I'm saying? They get mad when you do your thing and you get money in your demonstration while they had to sell out to get theirs. These are the same clowns that sat there and did the Bacon's Rebellion in 1666. You know what I'm saying? Because they was mad. And to be honest, a lot of these so-called Africans or slaves they talking about that they try to say that was us rebelling. It was a slave rebellion. Really, a lot of these people were probably foreigners. They might have been from Barbados. They might have come from the Caribbean. And some of them could have been from over here, but they were probably coming over here and they were under the crown. So they were working for the crown. So again, they had their rights and their movements were restricted while we could do whatever we wanted to do. And they got mad and they did a rebellion against the so-called British crown and the so-called the Moors and the Indians. Now we shut all that down and put them right back where they belong on them plantations, and we got even harder on them. You know what I'm saying? But that's the source. So a lot of people, a lot of the lames in your community now that's selling you out now, a lot of that started with that Bacon's Rebellion situation. These people were always mad. They got tired of the nobility. You know what I'm saying? So fast forward to about let's fast forward to like the time of the Revolutionary War. You had a lot of our people up in the Northeast and on the East Coast, but mainly up in the Northeast, they were taking up the cause of these people should be free. They shouldn't be subject to the so-called crown anymore. So again, that was a civil disagreement between our people. And you had the Moors, the old school Moors, who were still around. And most of us were like, nah. You know what I'm saying? We was like, and you had a lot of so-called Moorish tribes that was down with the situation of, the so-called United States forming and these people and these newer people getting freedom to move around and do business in America and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of us was like, nah, you know what I'm saying? We good. So that turned into the Revolutionary War. It was really a civil war. And of course, we know what happened with that. The United States was able to declare its so-called independence. And, a certain class of people who used to be just kind of indentured and enslaved to the crown type of working class, they had really no chance of coming up like that. They were able to, they got some type of freedom. You know what I'm saying? They were able to give these people a Bill of Rights, and they had never had that type of freedom before. You know what I'm saying? So they were able to kind of move around, do business now, and all this other stuff. So now, after the Revolutionary War, the United States was consolidated about 1783. Now that was when all the conflict was over, the treaties were signed and everything, and they were newly independent. Now, at that point, they had rebelled against the crown. So the United States had to figure out how to, at that point, because when they rebelled against the crown, British withdrew a lot of admiralty passes. So the so-called new United States, or the so-called new Americans, they had to negotiate. They had to negotiate to figure out how to move their ships, around the seas and be able to continue to do business with the powers. Now, one of the main people, this is the thing, and you can read history. One of the main so-called nations that America had to deal with in order to be able to move their ships around was so-called Morocco. You know what I'm saying? Now, they're always going to talk like, again, in the narrative we've been given, allegedly Morocco is that little bitty country over there in West Africa that's about the size of California. Now, ask yourself this question. Why would the newly formed United States need to deal with a little bitty country over there in North Africa that's about the size of California in the middle of a desert? You know what I'm saying? So what type of military or industrial, it's literally in the middle of a desert. There's no like real fertile land or anything over there. There's no real like huge resources or anything that this place can control. They don't really have like no military might, and it didn't even exist as a nation back then. You know what I'm saying? So if they're telling you that's Morocco over there, why would the United States need to deal with such a small country in the top of the Sahara Desert? You know what I'm saying? Way like thousands of miles away to do business. Like, come on. Because they didn't. Because Morocco has always been in America. You know what I'm saying? Now, when the United States was first consolidated, the border of the so-called United States was still the proclamation line of 1783. So literally the newly formed United States in 1783, it was the proclamation line of 1763. That was the border of the newly formed United States. And that was just the Appalachian Mountains all the way down to the Altamaha River in Georgia. That was literally the border of the United States. You know what I'm saying? That was in 1783. Now, what they don't like to admit is that the United States, everything west of the Appalachian Mountains and south of the Altamaha River was considered Morocco. You know what I'm saying? It always was. All the way back to when we gave the 13 colonies. When we gave the 13 colonies access. Before that, it was all Morocco. But we gave the British nobles the 13 colonies to land to do their thing. You know what I'm saying? We let them do their little corporate thing for a minute, for like 150 years or so. You know what I'm saying? Like, however long, might have been even, it was a minute. So literally everything west of the Appalachian Mountains was Morocco. You know what I'm saying? But they want, of course, they want you to think it was over there, that little bitty country over there in Africa. All right. So the United States, again, they want to be able to move their ships. Really, they want to be able to move their ships really around America. They want to be able to move their ships up and down these rivers, through the Gulf of Mexico, and continue to do trade. Now, they want you to think that the United States needed to negotiate with Morocco so they can move their ships all the way to the Mediterranean. Ask yourself this question. Why would a newly formed country like the United States need to be so worried about sending their ships 1,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean, thousands of miles across the Atlantic Ocean, all the way to the Mediterranean? You know what I'm saying? Like, why would there be such an issue with the so-called newly formed United States? That don't even make sense, and it never did. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so we're going to do the timeline when the United States was formed. We're going to do the timeline of how the United States had to negotiate with all of the treaties with Morocco, because the European powers, if you really do the research, the European powers had to do a lot of diplomacy with Morocco for some reason. They don't like you to know. They don't really like to stress the reason. But a lot of the European powers, like so-called France, Great Britain, and the newly formed United States, they all had to do a lot of business with Morocco for some reason. And we finna find out why. So, all right, now, I did some research on the subject, right? So, taking some excerpts from an article I read on U.S. diplomacy with Morocco, and really what we want to stress here is what a lot of our people have been dealing with. You know what I'm saying? Really and truthfully, is the Moroccan treaties between the United States and the European powers in Morocco, which is right here, and U.S. extraterritorial rights due to those treaties. That's the main political situation. They always want to steer you towards some black politics and all this other distractions. But the truth is, the main thing you're dealing with politically, that's why you got to understand nationality. That's why, again, a lot of y'all are lost without the moles. You know what I'm saying? But you got to understand, what you've really been dealing with is U.S. extraterritorial rights within Morocco. That's really the science of a lot of your political situations. All right, so let's check it out. So now, let's do the knowledge real quick. You know what I mean? So we're gonna take it back to 1783. Let's just do a little walking, because the energy kind of be bringing the energy just kind of be flowing, and it brings out just other forms of energy. You know what I mean? Cats want to start cutting the grass while we're doing our thing. So check it out. Now, 1784. Again, when the United States was newly formed, 1783, the so-called Britain withdrew all its admiralty passes. So the so-called U.S. ships were kind of vulnerable out there on the so-called waters. Now, what was happening was, again, we were cool with the so-called Moroccans were cool with the British. You know what I'm saying? Because, again, Britain dealt with a noble demonstration, and that's what we like dealing with. That's what we're used to. You know what I'm saying? Everything is 100. But now you got the so-called U.S. and you got new people out on the water on these ships that we ain't really vibing with like that. You got some new peasant type of people, and a lot of our people are like, man, who is these clowns? Where the nobles at? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so now as soon as the United States is formed, they start getting their ships seized out here on the water. So check it out. 1783, United States treaty. The treaties were formed for United States independence were signed. Now 1784, it says that Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin were commissioned to try to negotiate treaties with the Barbary states. And it also says that in 1784, an American ship was seized by Moroccan corsairs and taken to Tangiers. Now, they want you to think of the Tangiers that the Moroccans so-called took that American ship to was over there in Africa. But it easily could have been a city over here, like right up and down the Mississippi, because they like, again, they like to speak in code. They don't like to tell you where any of this stuff was. They just like to use names. So it could have easily been, that American ship could have easily been seized on the Mississippi River or something like that. I mean, you just really don't know, because these people are always speaking and writing in codes because they don't want you to know what's really going down. So check it out. Now, after that ship got seized, the United States, they authorized Thomas Barclay to go negotiate a treaty with the Sultan of Morocco, Sidi Muhammad III at the time. And the result of these negotiations was they signed a 1786 treaty. Barclay signed the Moroccan Treaty of Peace and Friendship in 1786 with Sidi Muhammad III, and it was ratified in 1787. And we've always been talking about for years more has been talking about the Moroccan Treaty of Peace and Friendship. Now, again, it said in 1786 the treaty was signed by Sidi Muhammad III and Thomas Barclay. Now, let's do the knowledge on so-called Sidi Muhammad, the so-called Sultan of Morocco at that time. Now they're going, again, if you research Sidi Muhammad, it's kind of, you know, they got information on his life that's kind of sparse and all over the place. But we done the knowledge over the years, and because they want you to think that so-called Sidi Muhammad was based over there in he was based over there in that Morocco over there in Africa. Now, in reality, Morocco was everything west of the Appalachian Mountains. So in reality, we done the knowledge. Sidi Muhammad, more than likely, of course, we know as a Sultan of Morocco, he was based in America. So he was based somewhere in North America. And we done the knowledge, and 9 times out of 10, Sidi Muhammad was based right there in Chicago. That was the seat of Morocco in Chicago. So Sidi Muhammad was in Chicago, and that's who the United States was negotiating these treaties with. So I want y'all to think about it like this. When you think of Sidi Muhammad III, the Sultan of Morocco at that time, 1786, 1787, I want you to think of like a Jeff Fort, a Larry Hoover, or a Big Meech or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Just to put it in context for y'all. And just think of this figure up in Chicago. And he's a real sultan. He's got, you know, he's Islam, he's Muslimed out. He got his turban. He's just real royal with it. You know what I'm saying? But he controls a whole army all through North America. He has sway over a whole army over North America, a whole confederacy. He's like the big boss. You know what I'm saying? Like, he has sway. He don't have complete control because it's still a confederacy, but he has a lot of sway over a lot of the confederacies and towns and everything all over America. The Sultan of Morocco, Sidi Muhammad, based in Chicago. So think about it like that. Just think about a Big Meech, a Larry Fort, a Jeff Fort, who is like he's a real international figure. That's how we was rocking out here. You know what I'm saying? And that's why they always go at these people who kind of come up in, you know, the so-called hoods in the streets, because they remember how we used to. They remember they used to have to answer to people like Sidi Muhammad III. So they like, well, we can't have these. You know it's in the blood. So they like, we can't have these type of figures raising up again. They've always came at these type of people. The Jeff Force and these people. But anyway, so they signed a treaty with Sidi Muhammad in 1787. Now, again, and then they said right after that treaty, the United States negotiated treaties with Tripoli, Tunis, and Algiers. Now, it said that it said in 1787, after that treaty, the United States negotiated separate treaties with Tunis, Tripoli, and Algiers. Now, we're going to do the science. They want you, again, there's a Tunis, a Tripoli, and Algiers over there in North Africa. But when you think of that, when you think of the Barbary coast in North Africa, the way you should start thinking of that is, it was like a Hawaii to us. It was a satellite of what was going on over here. It was not as big as what was going on over here. That was like a Hawaii to us. Everything going on in North Africa, yeah, that was part of our demonstration. There was Mississippian-blooded people over there, a lot of them. You know what I'm saying? And you can tell because our people will rock turbans with the waist ties and, you know what I'm saying? We dress a certain type of way. A lot of the newer so-called Sunnis and all, they don't really dress like us. You know what I'm saying? They wear them little kufis and all that stuff. They don't dress all regal like we do. You know what I'm saying? You look at old pictures of the Barbarys over there in North Africa, they was looking more like us. You know what I'm saying? So, when they said the United States did separate treaties with Tunis, Tripoli, and Algiers, more than likely they're talking about the United States did certain separate treaties after the Sultan with the southern Barbary states. So that's like the so-called Muskogee, or the so-called Tasalagi, or the Cherokee, or the Chata, the Choctaw, or the Sheekamauga. They did separate treaties with these because we were all moving as one. We were the Barbary states under the Sultan, but the Sultan was like the president. He couldn't tell everybody what to do because we was all confederated. That's like the president still, he can put out federal orders, but he can't control what the states do all the way. You know what I'm saying? So that's how we've always been. I told you they took our demonstration. So when you think the United States did separate treaties with Tunis, Tripoli, and Algiers, he's talking about these southern tribes, so-called states. You know what I mean? That's really what they're talking about. So now, do the knowledge. It said that even though they signed a treaty, it really didn't help anything. And the United States was still getting that ship seized. You know what I'm saying? So it said hostilities ensued with the Barbary pirates, so-called pirates, until 1816, big date, following the War of 1812. And it said following the War of 1812, the United States wasn't getting harassed as much by the so-called Barbary pirates. And so they weren't getting their ship seized. Now, do the knowledge to that now. Now, they're saying that after the War of 1812, now that tells you right there. Because, you know, with the War of 1812 came the Midwest, the so-called United States war with the Midwest Confederacy, with Tecumseh and all them people up in Ohio country. And you had the Creek Wars in the South and all that. You know what I'm saying? All them wars in the South. And they went all, you know, and so-called all the way to New Orleans. You know what I'm saying? that tells you right there. When they gave us the history of the War of 1812, they be trying to act like the United States was fighting with so-called Great Britain. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get, no, they was fighting the Barbary Wars in America back then. And it just said, if you read the article, it said the Barbary powers were kind of null and void a little bit after the War of 1812. So who were the United States fighting against? Were they fighting here and over in the Mediterranean? You know what I'm saying? They really had a fleet like that. They literally like 20 years deep, 20, 30 years deep, and they got a big enough fleet to go be fighting in the Mediterranean and in America. Come on, man. The whole Barbary Wars and all that was right here in America. You know what I'm saying? That's why they call it the Civil War of 1812. They were fighting with the Barbary powers in America. That's the War of 1812. They want to call it the British because, again, they want to write so-called Morocco out of history. They want to act like this whole country was not Morocco. You know what I'm saying? So they wrote it all out of history. So the War of 1812, remember this. The War of 1812 was the United States fighting against the Barbary powers in America, mainly. You know what I'm saying? So check it out. Now, after those wars, and another thing you do to knowledge too, just on a side note, is around the time of War of 1812, we did have the New Madrid earthquake in 1811, and that kind of brought a big disaster to a lot of the interior of the country. So that kind of helped the United States advance a little bit. But y'all do knowledge to that on your own time. It wasn't like they were just big and bad, and they just really knew they struck at the right. Everything came together for them to strike at the right time. That's all it was. But anyway, and so of course we have so many turncoat switching sides as always. You know, these clowns don't never gonna do right. You know what I'm saying? But now it gets interesting now. So following the War of 1812, it says that so-called Tunis, Tripoli, and Algiers, okay, had new treaties imposed on them. Now, again, what happened? We just reading through these codes. Now, at 1816, what happened? What was happening in the South after the Creek Wars? You know what I'm saying? We've been doing the knowledge to this. If you go through all the old drops, what happened after the Creek Wars in the South and all that? Weren't they forcing the so-called Indians to sign treaties in the South right after the War of 1812, right around 1816, when all these land cessions and all that stuff happening? Come on, man. So that's exactly what happened. You know what I'm saying? So again, Tunis, Tripoli, and Algiers are all the southern Barbary tribes. You know what I'm saying? So there might have been Tennessee, Tunis is Tennessee, you know what I'm saying? Tripoli, there might have been so-called the Mississippi, you know what I'm saying? Algiers like New Orleans, Louisiana and all that. And then Tripoli, that's like, you know, the Alabama turf and the Creek turf and Miccosukee turf. You know what I'm saying? They're speaking in code, man. You know what I'm saying? So now, this is where it gets interesting. Let's check it out. Now, with these new treaties, and we're talking about all these so-called land cessions and Indian treaties, that's all they are. Treaties with the Barbary states. You know what I'm saying? Now, let's read what happens with these new treaties. All right, now, it says, because the United States, basically with these new treaties, they forced their extraterritorial jurisdiction in Barbary territory now. You know what I'm saying? And they created American protectorates over their people with these new treaties. So this is where things changed a little bit. So now, it said in the article, it said in Islamic countries, the protectorate system, the American protectorate system, created serious difficulty under bilateral treaties. Now, it says European consuls obtained both almost complete jurisdiction over persons and properties of their own nation, okay? And the right to offer this protection to anyone they employed. So let's do the knowledge to that. Again, let's read it one more time. In the Islamic countries, the protectorate system created serious difficulty under bilateral treaties. European councils obtained almost complete jurisdiction over the persons and properties of their own nationals and the right to offer the protection to anyone they employed. Now, what that means is, prior to these treaties, if one of these so-called United States citizens or these settlers or whoever these people got caught outside of the Appalachian Mountains, outside of the U.S. border, we could just snatch them up, ransom them off. We could, you know what I'm saying? We could keep them in jail indefinitely, put them to hard labor, do whatever we want to do. The United States would have to pay the ransom or whatever they had to do. They couldn't do nothing about it. You know what I'm saying? Now, after these treaties of 1816, it's basically saying that when these people, if one of these settlers or whoever these people came into Barbary territory, which is the interior of this country, you know what I'm saying? It's not, they got nothing to do with no North Africa like that. The interior of this country, you know what I'm saying? And you bagged them up, you like due to the treaty, you had to turn them back over to the United States. And if you didn't, they could legally come in militarily and find that and take that person to do whatever they needed to do to get that person. So now that right there has been going on ever since then. So now they've been using that as reasons to invade everything ever since. So now we had done at that point in 1816, around that time, we had spent years bagging up, bagging up these people for being out of bounds. We had done slave raids, we had done all type of stuff. We had snatched these people up, they had ran away, and a lot of them was in our towns. You might have had these little European girls, they might have been property of a sheik, a concubine of a sheik of a town or something like that. Now, after 1816, guess what? The United States is looking for these. They're coming down looking for these people. They're like, well, you got so many of our citizens, or so-called Europeans or whatever, in your town, and now then we get to come down and bring them back and make sure they okay and all that stuff. Now we get to set up or whatever in your town and make sure our citizens are okay, and you can't do nothing about it. Now, how you like that, Morocco? How you like that, Mose? You know what I'm saying? That's exactly what they're doing, and they've been doing that to this day. I know a lot of y'all got experience. This was big back in the day. It ain't so big no more. But for a long time in the so-called hood or so-called Mississippian areas, a lot of times the police would come and like they saw, like say, a European girl or something like that with a Mississippian man in a car, or a European in a car, he just looked out of bounds. The police would literally stop you in the hood and say, and then they were like, what is this European doing here? Or ask the European if they was okay, or are they fearing for their life? No, they would just use that. They was doing it. They've been doing it ever since 1816. You know what I'm saying? Because before 1816, we would bag them people up and they couldn't do nothing about it. But ever since then, they've been using that as a precourse for invasion of the rest of the country, wherever their citizens were, because their citizens are always running away. You know what I'm saying? They always move around thinking they can go anywhere and think, you know what I'm saying? So the United States was just chasing their citizens down. You know what I'm saying? That's all they've been doing ever since. You know what I mean? So now, let's keep going. Now, let's see. Now, it also says these persons now were not subject to local law and were exempt from all personal or direct taxation or forced levies. We're talking about the United States citizens now. So now they weren't exempt to local law. They were exempt from local law or direct taxation or forced levies. Now, that also meant that these settlers moving around now, they were, no matter where they went in Barbary country, right, in so-called Morocco, now, they could move around and they were not exempt to Muslim law anymore due to these new treaties that that the Barbary powers got enforced on them. You know what I'm saying? Now, that means that a settler may come down in your turf, you know what I mean, in your town and act up and just start being all rowdy and stuff like that. And you might want to put a nightstick upside their head. You know what I'm saying? Because our people still did that. You know what I'm saying? We don't listen to these clowns, but we would put a nightstick upside their head even after the treaties, talking that nonsense. But that would start more conflicts and more wars. You know what I'm saying? Like the United States will keep coming down here. That's why they did all these so-called fake Indian removal acts, and Andrew Jackson and them had to keep running down, like the Creek War of 1836 and all that stuff. Because again, we were supposed to let these settlers, they were supposed to only be subject to the United States now wherever they went, and we weren't supposed to do nothing to them. But we weren't listening to them. We would still put things on these people, no matter where they went. We still the Barbary powers. You know what I'm saying? Like we ain't with all that. So But anyway, so that just goes to show how you had all this new settlement all in the South and all that after these treaties, because the United States was able to impose more extraterritorial rights, and they were able to pretty much get complete jurisdiction over all their citizens. And now their citizens could not legally necessarily, due to international law, could not be arrested by us anymore. We couldn't really bag them up like that. We always had to turn them right back over to the United States, and they've been doing that nonsense ever since. Now, check this out. It said the system lent itself to abuses, and many local citizens gladly paid money to secure exemptions. Let me read that again. Now, they said the United States could offer protection to anybody they employed and all that stuff. So now it said the system lent itself to abuses, and many local citizens gladly paid money to secure exemptions. Now, when they're talking about these local citizens, they're talking about our people. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the Mississippians who used to be under Muslim law and all that stuff, now all of a sudden they seeing a rise in power, and they seeing all this industrial money that's coming through. They started paying the United States and wanting to become citizens and all that stuff. So a lot of our people just started switching sides. You know what I'm saying? So now all these people are switching sides, and now you wonder why all of a sudden, like in 1830, after the War of 1812, they started creating all these states all of a sudden, just back to back to back. I'm saying? They started all these states of Georgia and all and Alabama and all these states start forming back to back to back because you had all of these old Mississippians sitting up here paying the United States to become citizens because they thinking they finna get some protection and they don't want to be under Muslim law no more because Muslim law is real. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and now these people are saying, well, yeah, I don't get to be so strict no more. You know what I'm saying? There's money coming and I ain't got to be so strict no more. And I get to be like a big dog in the so-called United States. I mean, just dumb stuff, man. All y'all, a lot of y'all clowns always fall for the play. A lot of y'all ancestors, like I said in the past drop, a lot of y'all ancestors got off their square about their nationality, and the Moors are the only ones that stayed down. That's why the first shall be last and last shall be first on you clowns. You know what I'm saying? It just said local citizens were playing the United States for exemption. That means a lot of our people were switching sides and becoming citizens. They weren't staying in the Barbary states. You know what I'm saying? Now check it out. Now, this is another thing. In 1859, Morocco demanded more, and this is Morocco. This is still based in Chicago now. This is Morocco. We still had that thing. The Sultan was still up there now. Now, it said in 1859, Morocco demanded more regulation of the protectorate system as councils interfered in local courts. Okay, now that just goes to show, again, we always had our own courts. We done passed through several towns and seen old courthouse buildings and all that that's been there for the longest. Now it says the United States was coming down, interfering in our courts and all that stuff. And the Sultan was speaking up about it. You know what I'm saying? So again, this is a big reason why the Confederacy was started, because a lot of these clowns that sit there and pay the United States and wanted to become citizens and sell out and not be Muslims no more and leave the old noble demonstration. A lot of these clowns, again, they started to realize that they had sold their souls, they sold their rights away, and they couldn't even function as independents no more. You know what I'm saying? Now because the United States was breaking every promise they made. You know what I'm saying? So y'all thought y'all was coming up and getting this money and being industrial, and y'all still got played. And that's why y'all wanted to form, a lot of these people wanted to form the Confederacy, because a lot of the Muslims still stayed down and they kept fighting like the so-called Seminoles and all these are Barbary nations. These are people who kept their shit together and they kept fighting. The Red Sticks and all these people. They kept bombing on these people. They never stopped. You know what I'm saying? So these clowns who realized they messed up, they sitting up here paying for exemptions and stuff like that and becoming citizens. Now they want to form the Confederacy. And they like, oh shit, we messed up Muslims. You know what I'm saying? And then one of the things they said in the Confederacy, they said if they won the war, they was going to re-recognize the Indian state. It was going to give the Moors their stuff back. You know what I'm saying? They said we messed up. We want to be Moors again. Essentially, that's what they were saying when they formed the Confederacy. But again, it was too late by then. A lot of them had already sold themselves out and let too much nonsense come down here, and it was just too late by then. You know what I'm saying? Too many people had sold out at that point. But anyway, so now it also says. Now, another thing, this is going on to this day. Let's go back to right here. It said, when we said the United States could offer their protection, this is an old treaty now. Again, this treaty was signed in 1786. This treaty was renewed in 1836, and it was renewed again in 1886, and then it ended in 1956. And we're gonna get into that later, or the science of 1956, right? Now, it said that now. The United States has had this treaty with Morocco where they could offer protection to anybody they employed. Now you wonder why. This is still going on to this day. You wonder why these people have been running immigrants and all these people all these years into your communities, owning businesses and all that stuff, and they get to set up shop like this. This is this Moroccan treaty that's been going on for the longest. They still doing that to this day. Now they up there in Chicago complaining about migrants and all that. This is the same mess. People have been using the United States. As long as they pay their taxes and they do whatever they got to do, the United States will protect them from getting a nightstick, from getting towed by the Moors in America. You know what I'm saying? By the Barbary Moors in America who's still here. The United States will protect all these clowns who come in here and loot your communities. That's been the place since 1816. They still doing that mess to this day. You know what I'm saying? So they offering protection to anybody they employ. So all these people who come here, they're getting employed by the United States, and they're being ran into your community and do the treaty. You can't do, you know what I'm saying? They under the protection of the United States. So you get up there and they treat you bad and you blah, blah, blah. They just call the police on you. You know what I'm saying? Everybody knows this coming off the boats getting over here. And this is why it's going on. That's why you got to know that's why you got to know politics and nationality and all of that. Dealing with this goofball stuff, this black power and all this civil rights mess. Man, this is a distraction, man. This is what's the real science right here. So check it out. So now, okay, it did say in, let's see, where we at? It said in 1877, this is deep. This is real deep right here. In 1877, it said the Sultan petitioned to the United States in 1877. Now the Sultan, again, is still in the Midwest. He's still up in Chicago and stuff like that. And also, let's make a note, in the Civil War, the Sultan backed the Union. You know what I'm saying? So he was putting his tabs in the United States. But in 1877, the Sultan asked the United States to offer a pathway for Moroccan citizens who are naturalized in the United States to return to Morocco and return to Moroccan jurisdiction if they so choose. Guess what the United States told the Sultan? He said, hell to the no. You know what I'm saying? And that's where the 14th Amendment came in, right? Because the Sultan, he was like, okay, you know, the war is over, and we you know what I'm saying, we need our people. If our people want to come back to you know, Morocco or whatever, and get back in their customs, they should be able to do that. The United States was like, hell to the no. You know what I'm saying? Now it said the United States. Let me see what I had. It literally said the United States said that naturalized citizens were equal to native-born citizens. That's why they've always stressed this thing about equality and all of that. That's where this comes from. The United States told the Sultan in 1877 that the naturalized citizens were equal to native-born citizens. So now they were naturalizing, after the Civil War, after 1865, they were naturalizing all of the old Muslim Mississippian Moroccans into the United States as 14th Amendment citizens. That's exactly what happened. That's when y'all officially left y'all country. You know what I'm saying? Really in 1865 or it's 1871, whenever the 14th Amendment was passed. So a lot of y'all walking around crying about the 14th Amendment like a badge of honor like that. Man, come on, man. That took you out of your country. And the Sultan was trying to get y'all back on y'all square in 1877. Again, man, you already know, man. You know, it was war camps, all that stuff. So, I mean, you can't really blame a lot of people, but people been trying to vouch for our people for a long time. So now, let's check it out. Where were we? Now, let's see. Now, this is the kicker. This is the kicker. This is going into the civil rights situation. And normally I don't go this long, but this is a lot of deep subject matter that needs to be talked about. So, again, it said the U.S. treaty. This U.S. treaty, it was renewed in 1836 and it was renewed in 1886. This U.S. treaty that granted U.S. extraterritorial jurisdiction officially ended in 1956. Let me say that again. This U.S. treaty that granted the U.S. extraterritorial rights in so-called Morocco was ended in 1956. So let me ask you this. What else was happening in 1956? 1955, the civil rights, right? That's why they wanted to bring y'all in. That was the whole integration play. Because literally in 1956, y'all had an international gateway to go right back into y'all country. And they couldn't do nothing about it. You know what I'm saying? So they had to run a play to keep as many of y'all involved in this nonsense as possible. It was the civil rights, communist, Marxist integration nonsense. You know what I'm saying? They ran that play on you because they did not want you going back to Morocco. Literally in 1956, you had the leeway to go right back to your country. You know what I'm saying? Internationally, and everybody would have recognized it. But everybody was asleep by then. You know what I'm saying? Pork eating. There was generations of playing around, you know what I'm saying? Going to juke joints and pork eating and all that nonsense. Y'all was so watered down to that point that y'all fell for any goddamn thing and just having low self-esteem and all of that. They pulled y'all right into the nonsense. You know what I'm saying? And then another thing that happened in 1956 was they created that fake kingdom of Morocco over there in Africa. It was never really even existed. You know what I'm saying? Before 1956. And the reason why they did that was because they wanted everybody to think that Morocco has always been over there in North Africa, when Morocco has always been over here. So now you got goofballs online. You know what I'm saying? A lot of y'all idiots, dummies fell for that play. You got silly folks online talking about some, if you claim to be a Moor, well, you know, you from North Africa. You ain't even from here. The Moors ain't from here. They from North Africa, blah, blah, blah. Man, you dummy. You fell for that stupid play they ran in 1956, breaking that fake country over there, in the Kingdom of Morocco over there in Africa. That didn't even exist before 1956. It was a whole play. And y'all are so dumb. Y'all don't read. Y'all are like kindergarten level when it comes to reading and writing and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Y'all don't even read and write. So now you want to talk. You fell for all of that dumb stuff. When Morocco was always your country. And it ain't all y'all, because some of y'all are not even from here like that. But you Mississippian, there's a certain way you carry yourself if you Moroccan for real. You know, and everybody know that. You know what I'm saying? So you know what I'm saying, just doing the science, man. That's what really happened. So they ran that play on civil rights because that treaty was up in 1956. Literally, you were supposed to retake the country in 1956, but they pulled you into the nonsense. That's why they don't like y'all like that. You know what I'm saying? They didn't integrate y'all because they like y'all. Literally, they were just trying to keep y'all in. Y'all was trying to keep y'all stupid. You know what I'm saying? For long enough time for them to continue to raid the land. And you wonder why they sped it up after 1956. They sped it up, sending all the industries overseas and tearing everything down over here. They had to hurry up. They're like, these niggas, they might wake up at any moment. You know what I'm saying? That's why this shit is gutted now. You know what I'm saying? I mean, just do the knowledge, man. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, just had to talk about the history of Moroccan diplomacy, man. It even goes deeper than that, but a lot of you understand politically, y'all are dealing with the treaties. Y'all are dealing with treaties in Morocco. You were always supposed to govern yourself based on these treaties. Morocco has always been everything west of the Appalachian Mountains ever since the 1600s. It was before the 1600s, it was all of it. But since the 1600s, Morocco has always been everything west of the Appalachian Mountains. And then another thing, one more thing before I close it out. I also read in this article that in 1871, the Sultan was told, he went up to the United States, he told the United States, again, the Sultan is, he's still in Chicago, and you could tell because they had the Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893, and they had all these Muslim buildings and all these Muslim looking royals up in Chicago at that exposition. And these were the Sultan and his people. They were still up there. They was getting money the whole time. You know what I'm saying? But check it out. In 1871, and we all know the science on what happened in the coup of 1871 and all of that. In 1871, the Sultan, it is right after the Civil War, the Sultan told he tried to put the whole country under the, he asked the United States because he said the Sultan did not want European powers to dismember Morocco. Because remember, even though the Civil War was over, the entire West was still unsettled. You know what I'm saying? Like the entire West. So it was still unsettled out West, but that was a part of Morocco. The Sultan still had jurisdiction over all of that. But he didn't, you know what I'm saying, we were militarily jacked up at the time, so he like, well, I'd rather have the United States than like France and all these other countries running up and cutting and carving that place up. So now you wonder why you had all this settlement out west and all that, because again, the Sultan is down with the Union at the time. So the Union is doing a lot of his bidding, you know what I'm saying, indirectly. So that's why they ran all the Buffalo Soldiers and all these people out there, you know what I'm saying, and was settled, because he was like, well, the lesser of all these evils, I don't want none of these folk in my junk. It's all jacked up. But the lesser of all the evils is the United States, because at least these people were under our people back in the day. So they'll be way more likely. It's going to get jacked up regardless, but they'll be way more likely to hold it down until we can get our stuff back together. So that's why all of a sudden you had all this mass settlement all in the West, because the Sultan asked the United States for protection. And that's kind of what they did. You know what I'm saying? He really gave them permission. You know what I'm saying? So, man, just doing the knowledge, man. All this stuff has always been going on. It's always been Morocco. Some of your ancestors signed their rights over being dummies. You know what I'm saying? Again, stand on your square. Just take the long road. There's no easy roads through this shit, man. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, tapping in live, doing the knowledge. U.S. extraterritorial rights is your political situation. I'll tap back in with y'all later. Peace.